Hello and welcome to another episode of the VCD Roundtable. It's going to be episode number 38, and today's primary topic is all around Aria Operations and chargeback, as this is the VCD Roundtable, clearly with the focus on the service provider, but there might be here and there also some interesting stuff around for other users. Together with me, with Matthias, who is here and says hi now.
Yeah, I'm here again, as always. Really looking forward to hear a lot about operations and chargeback from Anna or Aria Operations.
Yes, hi, Alain Gendrits. I put down Aria Operations because that's the name that Eve accidentally gave me in a meeting beginning of the week. So I thought it was fun. Aria Operations. I'm now. I do everything around Aria Operations, automations, ops for networks, ops for logs. Since a long time at comdivision, I've worked with a lot of the service partners, and so I'm looking forward to giving you some information here today. I know that we didn't hear from
a temporary solution, and even if it's just a name, a temporary name, stay the longest. Okay,
we haven't heard from the cat. Oh, he's gone. Okay.
No, he's gone. He's gone. What have you brought for us today? Which topics are you having for us?
Well, mostly a topic that is resonating with a lot of the service providers these days, and even some other corporate accounts, is chargeback and costing, and how this all changed in operations, and of course how operations is changing in the new packaging with VCF at Broadcom. A lot of changes and a lot more changes coming.
But so you're starting with the topic. So what's really the difference between cost, showback, chargeback, maybe billing and invoicing? So what are these different topics?
All right, I'm glad you asked me. I think I have a little slide about this that I wanted to show you. So people, if you're listening to this, you can look at the recording later on. But I can best explain with this front page of operations, which is now not very clear to you. I'll try to figure that out. Why? Can't figure it out. Okay.
Maybe you haven't paid the bill?
Yeah, maybe. Or I thought it was me not putting on my glasses, but okay. Anyway, operations. Oh, here we go. I have to move. Operations is all about the pillars, is about monitoring, of course, alerting of your environment, and costing. Everybody forgets that costing is a major heading for operations, where we can do a lot. And the base of everything is costing. Tout court, I would say in French, is you have a big database in operations that you can populate. Operations will start to learn from the data it gathers from vCenter and other APIs what you have in your environment, which servers, and it's intelligent enough to say like, hey, it's this HPE model or it's this Dell model, and so on and so on. This is what we think is the standard price for this config. Please fill out what you paid, or if it's a leasing, do you lease on 5 years, on 7 years, like you do sometimes in the US? And then the more data you put in here, the more you get a picture of what your environment is actually costing you. I did this for a government customer in the Netherlands. Their purchasing department had a look at it. They became so enthusiastic that they dedicated a person to look for all the contracts of the last years and put everything in here, because you can also put in your licenses here, your Windows licensing, your Red Hat, your VMware licenses, whatever you have, and you get a complete picture of what it costs you. That's the basis for everything. interesting to know for everyone, even for a service provider, because if you charge customers, you want to know what it costs you. Showback is a step further for most of the corporate customers, and showback is, hey, I'm going to fill out some pricing rules for vCenter VMs, and I'm going to say like, well, every VM, okay, you have the cost, but I had the cost for backup. I had a vCenter tag, and if that vCenter tag is present, I charge you this amount of money, blum. And at the end of that, you can make some nice reports and show your internal customers like, hey guys, this is what the environment is costing. This is what you owe me, what we need to do to keep things running for you. A very sobering experience for a lot of customers. And then, of course, you have the step for the service providers, but we also have some enterprise customers who do that internally, and that's the chargeback. It is to say, I make pricing rules again, but different from the one for showback. I make pricing rules for my cloud director, and I say like, hey, this is the cost for CPU, for RAM, for networking, for a load balancer, for storage. And every month I'm going to send you a bill. I create a bill here, and bam, I send you a bill that you can pay. That's the difference between the three.
Okay, that sounds very reasonable, if you ask me. So in the past, we used the tenant app, especially for CSPs. We used the tenant app to install and enable some additional pricing policies, and I think the tenant app relied on the database of Operations Manager to do all the number crunching and stuff. But what have changed with the most recent versions of Operations Manager? Because as far as I'm aware of, the tenant app is gone.
Tenant app is gone. Already in the previous version, there was an integration. So tenant app, as you said, was an application that VMware wrote maybe quite quickly, because we used to have in the past something called chargeback that disappeared. This is not the chargeback we're talking about today. This was the old chargeback app that existed 10 years ago. But customers were asking for this functionality, along with, hey, where's the multi-tenancy in operations? It's especially for the service providers. So VMware wrote a program that you deployed in a container. It was actually a container inside a VM that you deploy. And like you said, it uses the database from operations, used the costing engine from operations, and used the connection to VCD and vCenter to get some more data out and to do the billing and to make reports, dashboards, metrics, and alerts available to tenants. So you could say like tenant A can see this dashboard with their VMs, with whatever you put on that dashboard, or they can call this report or receive alerts, okay? Or none of that, only the bills, okay? It worked, and then the decision was taken in light of the whole roadmap of what is going to happen, that it makes no sense to keep this as a separate app because it's all operations. So let's bring it inside. And with 8.16 chargeback, the tenant app disappeared and the functionality was integrated in operations. So this is where at this point you had now in costing not only showback but also chargeback. Now, a big tip for all our listeners, if you're struggling to test this in your operations, you're probably looking for the pricing rules. Stop looking. They don't exist anymore like in the tenant app. What you do is you edit a policy. Let me try to show you that. Here we go. In the policies, if you don't know policies, very quickly, policy is a configuration file inside operations that you can apply to one object or a group of objects, whatever. You have a standard policy, one at the start that is valid for everything. And you can tweak which alerts you get, capacity tweaks, and so on. And now you get at the bottom, right behind my name, you get a tile for vCenter pricing, and next to that VCD pricing. This is where the pricing policies now live. You have to click on that, and then you can edit it, and you will see that, for example, you will see here for a VCD pricing, you see everything that you used to have in a pricing policy. How much does it cost for the CPU, for the RAM? Do I only charge when switched on? Always, per hour, per day. Everything is in here. You activate it. Don't forget it. And then apply it to an org VDC, something like that, or an organization, and the pricing will be calculated, and you can do billing afterwards. If you want to do this based on vCenter without Cloud Director, you can. You have to use the other tile, but you have to activate it. Otherwise, nothing will happen. You will see empty reports. But this whole thing was brought into operations. You have to look a bit. Second big tip I can give you, even I was looking for this before I understood. If you look for the configuration that you could do in the tenant tab and you go like, hey, I can't find anything back in operations, it is because you have not installed the Cloud Director extension. You have to install the integration for Cloud Director, which you can download from the marketplace. It's called Management Pack for Cloud Director 8.16 at the moment of this podcast. And you have to install it here in Operations. Operations knows this principle of integrations where you install management packs to add extra functionality. So you have to install that pack. You have to connect it to your Cloud Director so that it can get data out of Cloud Director. You'll get nice inventory trees with org VDCs, VApps underneath the org VDCs and everything, and metrics and alerts. And in administration, because the whole menu changed, in administration, you will get a tile for chargeback. No, this is the bill generation. Oh, here we go. Yeah. You'll get, this is only visible in administration, the chargeback tile, if you installed the VCD integration. I cannot repeat it often enough. And then you will see here that you get the functionality that you used to have in Tenant app to make metrics, dashboards, reports available to certain tenants, so that they themselves in the Cloud Director portal can see these things without going into operations. So a lot of has changed. In fact, everything available in Tenant Hub has been brought into operations. This functionality, the last functionality from Tenant Hub that was not in here, is available now in this version 8.18 from operations.
Cool, but so if I run a VCF stack on my own as a CSP, and I'm already having a VCD on top as a CMP and stuff, so what do we really need? What are next steps which need to be taken to use chargeback, showback?
If you have this stack, you're in luck, because you don't need anything extra. There are no add-ons to buy or anything. Everything is available in operations. At this point, I also have to stress, if you're already working with operations, you're in luck, because operations is the management tool for VCF now in VCF 5.2, and will be even more in the next announced at Explore VCF 9. I'll say something about that at the end, but everything is available in here. So the only thing that you have to do is go in, install the integration for Cloud Director, connect it to your Cloud Director, connect operations to your vCenter. But I'm hoping you already did that if you have VCF with at the installation time with LCM, and then activate the dashboards and the reports that you want here. Make some pricing policies in the policy, and make them available to orgs or org VDCs that you want, so that at the end of the month you can send them bills or even send them automatic bills over email.
Right. So it's in the end just to deploy operations manager. Bottom line.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But Eve, I'm not letting you off the hook, because if you have the VCF stack and it's just a deployment, but does it have any license implications?
No. So operations is available.
Your name is Alain, not Eve, right? Just
No,
I get carried away.
In the service provider space, it's pretty straightforward because we only have the VCF cloud licenses by now, which is including everything to the enterprise level. I think that's perfectly fine. You are still consuming CPU cores with this, so in the end, you need to calculate for that. But overall, there is not, like in the past, all the different editions of Aria Operations and stuff like that anymore. You basically have the all-you-can-eat buffet from it all the time and can basically deal with that from that perspective. So that is more or less completely fine. The question more for me comes into play if we are using this for billing, and this has been one of the challenges, or not one of the challenges, but what are the things people should think about from a design or implementation perspective to make sure that if one VCOps instance would actually fail, that they are not losing any data or stuff like that? So how could I protect that data is actually recorded at any point in time? Because at least the last time I checked VCOps, it's still not able to actually pull historical data from vCenter. So I cannot afford as a service provider to even have 5 or 10 minutes downtime of VCOps because I'm missing 5 or 10 minutes of data potential.
But is it not able to kind of collect the last hour if you missed the collection cycle or something?
Technically, it is even able. Back in the days when we played with VCOps and we actually worked with the SolarWinds integration, I actually made it pull all the data from SolarWinds from the past. It's basically just a definition on what your adapter can do. But the vCenter adapter, as far as I know...
So with the vCenter, you have the issue the data is not available after an hour because it's rolled up to the next store cycle in the database.
Hey guys, can I say something? Can I say something?
No, I'm just kidding.
You can, for sure.
Actually, we had this case with a customer where Fabian consulted me about this. There are 3 levels to this. And the first level is something that I keep mentioning to every customer, and some of them are starting to listen, and that is the architecture of operations. Don't deploy operations without cloud proxies. Okay? There are 2 reasons for this. So basically, this means you deploy operations, an OVF, and you deploy separate OVFs close to your vCenters and your VCDs to gather the data. There are 2 reasons to do this. The first reason is to protect your operations cluster, because if your operations cluster has to do everything, namely gathering the data from the integrations, dynamic trending, cost calculations, the UI, if you haven't sized it appropriately, and if it comes into CPU RAM problems, the first thing it will drop is the UI. And then people call and say, like, my UI is not responding. No, because operations says, like, everyone go away, I'm too busy. You can protect yourself from that by offloading the data collection on the cloud proxies. And the advantage is that the cloud proxies, if for whatever reason your operations cluster is not available, they will buffer the data, okay, for as long as necessary. So you install something new, something goes wrong, the cloud proxies buffer the data coming from your vCenter, Cloud Director, whatever, and will send them over once the connection is back. You can even make that data persistent on the cloud proxies. The second thing is, if you deploy operations, you can deploy a master node and a standby node. This means that you have 2 identical nodes. You have not, it's called high availability in operations, but that's discussable because it's not really transparent. But anyway, if your master goes down for whatever reason, you have a complete copy in the standby, and that one will take over. And you can even go as far, but not many customers do it. You can go as far as having CA available in operation, continuous availability, where you have 2 operations clusters that sync data, and you have one VM that is like the witness VM to keep the synchronization between the 2 clusters in sync. This is the extreme where you have 2 complete clusters of operations working for you.
But still, I think if we talk about invoicing, so for CSPs, because they want to send an invoice to their customers sooner or later, I think it's still challenging to get data out of operations manager to reuse or to use it further in an invoicing tool, because ops manager is not meant to invoice customers. So that's a bit different still.
Discussable, but remember we did that for one customer in the US who were not, well, could not be happy with the standard billing because, like you said, they have their software already for invoicing and what have you, and they needed an integration with Workday for whatever reason. And so in the end, I worked with them, because in operations you have a very complete API interface, and we wrote a Python script together to get the data from the bills from views in operations out of there in CSV. I even had to change columns for some strange reason, and then they could import that straight into Workday.
But yeah, so that's all nice. But you started mentioning VCF 9. So what's your best guess about the bright new future and future of features we expect from chargeback and operations?
Can I now have a big banner saying this is speculative?
So guys, that's just opinion, right? That's reading the glass ball. What's happening in the future? So yeah.
I've been in a number of meetings with Broadcom people, and there are certain things that we can say for sure. Okay, the good news for us people like me, Aria, is if you know and use operations, operation is becoming the management utility in VCF 9. It is the management pane, P-A-N-A, not P-A-I-N, to do everything. And the other one is, of course, automation. Automation is there as the second pillar for your deployments. What will happen is, since operations becomes the focus, operations for logs or log insight or Verly, however we used to call it, will be integrated into operations. Will cease to exist as a separate product and will be integrated in operations. That's the good news. It's also still there. It's in operations. If somebody tells me like, those are big changes, I don't believe you. Well, I have some news for you. Try looking today in VCF 5.2 for your Skyline advisor. It's not there anymore. It's now called the diagnostics pane in operations. That's there you get all the data that you used to have in Skyline. Not everything yet, but it's getting there. You can even check certificates now. So everything is getting integrated in operations. Hold on to your seats now. SDDC Manager is probably going away, and it's also going to get integrated in this one management tool. That's what's going to happen in VCF 9. Operations will become even more the central management utility. With that, there is another thing that I have to add, some changes that have happened over the past months. Some of you know that I have a sweet history in management packs for operations with Blue Medora and so on. You will have seen in the last months that most of those management packs have disappeared. Okay, some of those management packs The TVS suite is no more. Some of those management packs, Broadcom has said like, hey, the vendor does a fine job. So, for example, Dell, we integrate with your management tool, OneManage. HP, we integrate with your tool, and that's it. The NetApp management pack is open source, I think, anyway. For all the other solutions, for whatever you need, the answer is going to be Management Pack Builder. And maybe we'll do a session about that some other time. But it's a tool that we used to use at Blue Medora internally. It's an OVF that deploys a website internally for you. And you just bring the data from the API you want to connect to, because we talked about vCenter and vCenter data. Operations connects to API endpoints and gathers data. That's what it does. And with Management Pack Builder, you can come in, and I had a customer who wrote their own management pack for Commvault backup to follow backup jobs. If you have an API available, you know how to authenticate. You can quickly do that in Management Pack Builder and make your own management pack. Okay, that's another thing that is going to happen more and more.
Nice. So because we're slowly coming to an end, I would like to add something regarding VCF licensing, and that's as far as I understand licensing. So Operations Manager is part of VCF, and if you license VCF, you get Operations Manager as an enterprise version of the product. And as far as, again, I understand that from now on, if you have licensed everything with VCF, you can also connect physical devices to Operations Manager, and there is no additional license cost from the Broadcom side of licensing. I don't know if a vendor might charge some licenses to connect their devices to Operations Manager. I don't know, but this whole series is not around third-party vendors. So we're in the CSP space. So from now on, please, guys, connect physical hosts, connect storage systems, whatever, and then you can collect additional metrics and get the even bigger picture on your infrastructure for performance, capacity management, and planning, and those areas of interest.
Exactly. Good point.
All right, Eve, you want something to add? Oh,
no, I'm
perfectly fine. Movie going on in your background, dude.
That's just the screensaver from the FPV.
It would be so awesome if a big shark just shows up or something like that. Sorry, it's impressive.
Maybe let's wait for half an hour and then it shows up. No, I think this is a good starting point, giving people the overview on where we are, where we came from. And I think it's, to be realistic, currently the best option people have. From when it comes to invoicing, when it comes to normal showback and chargeback, I think it's pretty good. When it comes to the invoicing part, I think it's the lack of really good APIs and historical data access and stuff like that. There are still a hell lot of limitations where where I would be very, very careful with that. It's like
I would kindly ask to rephrase, because the API is there. It's just the lack of documentation.
Which for me means basically the same like with any other process. If it's not documented, it's not existing, period. It's very simple. And especially the point is also the point is also not necessarily only about whether it's documented. The other part is it also supported, which is another big challenge, because if I don't get, let's say, if I don't get support, if the API gives me BS back, then it's nice that I have an API documentation. But if the other side then says, oh, this is a development feature, I'm not going to support any of that, that's an interesting approach as well. So The first thing we would need is an API. The second thing, as from a service provider perspective, which I would think we desperately need, is a clear support statement that the APIs are fully supported and are going to be managed. Otherwise, it's a bit of a tricky thing. And but that's, in the end, that's a challenge for every API in many cases. But it would be an important part, which is, to be fair, I think one of the reasons why so many providers are still using any kind of weird PowerShell scripts to pull the data out of the systems and use that, because at least, even though it is also not supported, they at least know what it does. Because that's the challenge. Is like, and I know you have done that several times for service providers. If you actually pull some finance reporting or something like that out of it, and then the service provider says, but these numbers don't make any sense, who do you call to actually get that sorted? I mean, yes, people can call us, and our service providers can actually work with us on that, but that is always more or less a time and effort basis, and that is clearly something where I see why the service provider says like, we don't want to do that. Or were you ever successful with filing a support ticket and say it's like, okay, these numbers don't make any sense. Can you please actually explain me how they came together? He's silent.
Oh, so many stories to tell. But Aria is not making any comments on this one, right?
Oh no.
No comment is also a comment. No, I mean, it's not our. It's just something, as we say on all the sessions again and again. This whole story, or not this whole storyline, but the whole idea of these sessions and stuff like that is to be open and clear with, on one hand, the advantages, but also the challenges we see in the products and the tools. And we know that some of the business units are listening in, and because it doesn't help anyone if we just actually make it a nice, hey, it's all nice and easy. People should at least be aware of the challenges and then can work with that. But in the end, the question is, what is easier? Is pulling data out of Aria Operations, or pulling data with PowerShell or whatever else directly out of the systems? And especially when it is the later one, I would be expecting that you will see a whole lot of API changes on that very soon. Because in the end, what Broadcom is currently saying or doing with VCF9 and everything is a modernization of the infrastructure. And they are actually adjusting everything to become a more common layer, which means one API is going to win, one style of API is going to win. And the way on how they do that at the moment is, I'm not necessarily expecting them to work like the old cloud provider giving you 5 years lead time. I would expect this is going to be more like within the Broadcom time periods. You get a maximum of 12 months, then the new APIs are the only ones available. 12 months is the maximum depreciation period you get. So if I'm currently building something new, I would say I'm potentially safer off in trying to do something against Aria Operations, because then I only have to worry about one API versus doing it with PowerShell against, or something else against all the other systems, because then I'm going to build one for vSphere, for VCD, for NSX, and everything else. So potentially then if I'm currently building something new for myself, it's easier and safer to go against Aria Operations versus going against the tools. Because I'm expecting that the APIs for all of these tools are going to change in the next 1 or 2 years. Massive.
Yeah, so that statement makes perfect sense. But again, just being honest with everyone, it's our thinking and our idea of the future and what APIs might look like in the future. That's not a Broadcom statement. Yes,
it's my glass ball.
So for all people who just listening, Eve is currently showing a glass ball into the camera. So that's what he's getting all his information out.
Now
do you know what's in the glass ball?
Oh, I don't want to know.
In the glass ball, it says comdivision. So the answer is in the glass ball.
That's great.
Well, if you break it in the glass ball, you're sure to get that answer.
Yeah. All right. So, thank you very much. So, what I'm taking from this session, so it's some closing statements, is you just need to look into Operations Manager. Just use it, get used to it. It's part of the VCF licensing. But my final statement is, because it's a great tool, but it's not just install and use. You need to spend time and configure or adjust the parameters to fulfill your needs to get actually the best value out of operations and chargeback.
And that would be my point, where I would even say sometimes you should really think about whether it makes sense to try to figure all of that out by yourself, or maybe define your requirements and then rather book a workshop with Mr. Aria Operations and do that, because potentially that's sometimes easier. As I would also say, is like attending one of the standard trainings is most likely not going to help you as a service provider, because you have specific needs and scenarios. And so from that perspective, again and again, you always have all the wonderful options. You can either try to figure it out by yourself. You can try to read documentation, which is not necessarily the VMware documentation is not necessarily for self-learning. That's more to explain individual features. Or you can go to a normal training class, or you can actually book Mr. Aria himself. And
I'm currently thinking how long it will take if we name him Aria Greenitz. How long it will take to really spread out to the world.
we will just continue to do that. We will
whatever you told me, that was the best option. Work with me. As an example, what I told you about the integration of metrics, alerts, and dashboards in the portal for your tenants, that's not in the official documentation. I had to find it out.
See, and this is why we call you Aria Operations. I changed already the Active Directory name, so your new email
anymore. It's Greenitz from now on.
What did I do? What did I do?
Oh, we're just moving the R. It's not that bad. Okay, though. So,
what's going to be next episode? I think we have a lot again.
Really?
Yes.
You mean Aria Greenitz?
Yes.
Compliance.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, Eve is
gone. Everyone's away.
Compliance and maybe
he said compliance.
Well, maybe with a little flavor of sovereign cloud. Who knows?
Okay. I think episode 39 will come out in the future with the topic compliance and a bit more. Some magic dust here.
So thank you all for listening in, and hope to see you at the next episode. And we try to get this one out in the next couple of days. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.